All of us secretly dream of a world where the systems of humankind, the economic, political, educational, corporate, industrial systems are aligned with our highest ideals, principles of unity, selflessness, oneness, our highest moral principles. The problem is when our rational minds realize how antithetical these ideas are to our current world, our current systems. With all the war and suffering, loneliness in the world today, how would it even be remotely possible that such a world could come into being? Where would we even begin? Well, our journey begins in a very unlikely place, with something that maybe you all have experienced at some point or other. Begins with transcendent experiences. From the beginning of recorded history, humans have recorded a bewildering variety of these non-ordinary experiences of unity and transcending the ego or self, psychic experiences, even dying and reporting encounters with deceased relatives and divine beings. Gopi Krishna was one such person who had his own set of transcendent experiences and wrote a series of books in prose and rhyming poetry with one single message, which was to urge scientists to investigate these transcendent experiences. He believed very strongly that this investigation would reveal a hidden biological mechanism that's responsible for all of these transcendent experiences. We call this biological mechanism the Kundalini process. Most importantly, Gopi Krishna hypothesized that this mechanism could give rise to the mother of all transcendent experiences, something he called higher consciousness. Now, higher consciousness is not a new concept. In fact, some have theorized that all religious founders, including the authors of the Vedas thousands of years ago, were members of the same family. I'm not talking about, the Kardashians or the Rockefellers. I'm talking about a family of evolved human beings who possess this new form of consciousness, higher consciousness. These ideas hold the seeds to understanding this age-old mystery of religion, its purpose, its meaning, its value. But how would science even begin to unravel such a complex mystery? Well, to begin investigating these experiences, the Emerging Sciences Foundation has been collecting survey responses gathered from around 650 people across 37 different countries around the world. The survey contains 268 distinct questions about the participants' transcendent experiences, psychological experiences, physical experiences. Some of you may have filled out the survey. Within the past 50 years or so, new statistical techniques like structural equation modeling have been developed to test hypotheses about things that we can't measure directly, but can measure indirectly. Things like depression or economic development, certain diseases. This also happens to be a perfect scientific tool to understand things like spiritual experiences. An approach that some in academia and even science might regard as heresy simply due to the nature of the material being studied. However, I believe that approaching spiritual experiences in an objective and empirical manner has enormous potential to aid in our understanding of this phenomenon. So we use these techniques in an effort to make sense of the data from our survey respondents and created a new model of these transcendent experiences. I'll just note here that our results are part of a preprint research paper that's currently been released to the scientific community and is available online. So what did our model look like? Well, the first and most dominant construct that we found was an experience that we call unity consciousness. This is the core of higher consciousness. In the experience of unity consciousness, someone may have an experience of union with a divine God or universal consciousness. They might experience an expansion of consciousness and an expanded comprehension of reality. They gain a new knowledge or awareness of an unbounded intelligence behind the universe. Many times they lose their fear of death or are presented with the certainty of their own immortality. All sense of separateness can disappear, and a person may have increased feelings of unity with creation, sometimes very, very strong. So to summarize, the two main parts of this experience are an experience of an intelligence behind the universe and the experience of unity. Almost inseparable with this experience of unity consciousness is the experience of bliss. The experience of bliss includes an overwhelming sense of wonder and awe, intense feelings of peace, and an overwhelming sense of love. Next, the experience of insight. In insight, one gains a new understanding of the spiritual truths or insight into the inner meaning of spiritual teachings. They gain a profound insight into the inner workings of the cosmos, and gain an unshakable conviction about the reality of their experience. Next, we have somatic energy sensations. These are feelings of energy flowing or vibrating within, sensations of energy rushing up the spine. These are the symptoms commonly associated with Kundalini awakenings, but as we'll show, they're actually only a small piece of the puzzle. Next, we have luminosity. These are sensations or white light, sensations of white light or luminosity or visions of light. Now, these 5 categories define the experience of higher consciousness. And based on a person's answer to only 18 questions, we can now determine the degree to which someone has experienced higher consciousness with statistical accuracy and reliability. These questions form what we call the HC18 scale. It's a new psychometric measurement scale that was validated as part of our most recent study. So why is this experience of higher consciousness so important? Well, first, the analysis revealed with a very, very high degree of statistical confidence that all 5 of these categories of experience have a single underlying cause. In our framework, a biological mechanism that we call the Kundalini process. The model reveals that experiences normally thought to be distinct and separate are actually part of one dominant underlying process. When you think about descriptions of Kundalini awakenings, they're normally associated with, energy rising in the body and things like that. But what we found is that these experiences are only the bottom rung of a spectrum of experience leading to a radical new form of consciousness, higher consciousness. We also created a predictive model and found that traits of selflessness, altruism, and a strong belief in the oneness of humanity are highly predictive of the development of higher consciousness. People with these traits are more likely to have profoundly positive experiences of higher consciousness. Other personality traits like intellectual talents or dedication to an important social cause, being inwardly aware, and proneness to peak experiences are also predictive of higher consciousness. There was a large range of physical and psychological symptoms, both negative and positive, that are also highly correlated to the experience of higher consciousness. For example, the surfacing of unconscious issues might occur. So I think it's helpful to think about all of this as an expedition to higher consciousness, or as you say in the UK, a trek, I think is the right word, rather than adopting practices focused on convincing yourself that you've actually evolved. But what about other experiences, things like psychic experiences? Well, things like clairsentience, or the ability to gain knowledge or greater insight into things beyond normal perception. Psychic empathy, the ability to tune into the emotions and physical feelings of another person beyond normal perception. And precognition, a sense of knowing or foretelling of events before they occur. Well, all of these are related to higher consciousness. But what about other experiences, things like non-local, non-material experiences? Things like visions of deities or encounters with non-material entities, maybe the deceased or spirit guides, out-of-body experiences, even near-death experiences. Well, all of these also likely share a single underlying cause with the experience of higher consciousness. Let me skip ahead here. So let's talk about how we use our new HC18 higher consciousness scale. Since the scale has been psychometrically validated, we can use structural equation modeling to discover predictors of the experience. So in this diagram, the boxes on the left-hand side, that's the left, represent the indicators or survey questions of higher consciousness. The oval in the middle represents the experience of higher consciousness, something we can't measure directly, but can measure indirectly through its indicators. And then the box on the right represents possible predictors of higher consciousness. These can range from biological biomarkers, psychological markers, even attitudes and behaviors that are supportive of the process of developing higher consciousness. Using this technique, we can now, with high accuracy, understand the biological components of these experiences. There appears to be three major systems involved: the nervous, reproductive, and digestive systems. Scientists now can study these systems to understand how and why they might be involved in the experience of higher consciousness. Now, it's well known that the brain is affected by spiritual experiences. That's been well documented in the scientific literature. But this research shows that the reproductive system is also involved in the experience of higher consciousness. This raises important questions about the underlying biological processes. Ancient scriptures speak of the role of the reproductive system in the expansion of consciousness. We found new empirical evidence demonstrating its role, but that's only the beginning. So what have we learned? Well, to summarize, we've learned that Gopi Krishna's theories based on his own personal experiences have proven correct thus far. Traits of selflessness, altruism, and a strong belief in the oneness of humanity are important to the development of higher consciousness, maybe more so than specific practices. Your ability to see the beauty, joy in life, to experience natural highs, and experience unconditional love, all of these may be predictive of higher consciousness. Both physical and psychological symptoms, negative and positive, are also a part of this process. Another important question is whether the perception of intelligence behind the universe during the experience of higher consciousness has any merit, or whether it's a hallucination. If it has merit, higher consciousness could then represent a new brain function and mode of perception, bringing us one step closer to the humbling experience of soul, God, and the divine. Now, what about some practical real-world applications? Well, first, the development of awakening protocols and life recommendations. If this is a biological process that is proceeding, how can we live our lives, structure our lives in a way that is supportive of this process? This is one of our main research questions moving forward. There's also a great deal of potential for biological investigation and discovery. So understanding, as I mentioned, what systems are involved and how the body works to support the development of higher consciousness. Now, expanding outside of the domain of just pure hard science, the influence of public policy. So establishing that this biological process and the development of higher consciousness is occurring widespread throughout the population, and that it may hint at our evolutionary trajectory as a species, how can we then influence public policy to make our social systems, our environmental systems, our corporate systems, bring them more into alignment with this biological process? Also, social influence. If you think about how individuals treat each other, the understanding that being selfless, altruism, having a perception, a belief of oneness is important to your own evolution, this might significantly influence the way that we interact with each other. And general scientific advancement. We live in an age where we drive our science from a materialistic paradigm, that consciousness is created as a byproduct of the brain. This might actually turn that whole idea on its head and show that consciousness exists independently, and the brain may serve as more of a filter, if you will. So imagine for a moment that this empirical research continues, that it's found that humanity is evolving toward a higher dimension of consciousness through a biological process requiring each one of us to treat each other in a way consistent with the core religious teachings of all time, with love, compassion, and equanimity. How might our social systems evolve? How might we treat each other? How should we seek to evolve ourselves to establish ourselves in higher consciousness? their proverbial paradise mentioned in every religious tradition around the world. It could be that one bright day, humanity enters the kingdom of heaven together and finds that the only way to truly get there is hand in hand. Thank you.